from previous recordings. I got to wait a few seconds. Okay, hey, Rick
We're
Usher, City of Kansas City, Missouri. I'm an assistant city manager, and this is an ongoing topic in our Coalition for Digital Inclusion's Digital Inclusion Week. I have Jeremy Hegley with the Federal Reserve of Kansas City, Missouri, and Tom Esselman from PC for People, formerly known as Connecting for Good. And we're talking today about the Employer Laptop Challenge that Jeremy has launched at the Fed starting back in April, and then the City of Kansas City, Missouri's um, Employer Laptop, I'm sorry, digital upcycling program. So that's an agreement we've had in place for a while on the city donating surplus computers for digital equity efforts. So Jeremy, can you give us an update on the a quick overview of the Employer Laptop Challenge, and then maybe an update on where you are across the Fed?
Sure. Thanks for having me, Rick. So the Employer Laptop Challenge is something that we launched in April, as Rick said. And our goal with it was to help encourage other employers that this is a viable way that they can make an impact in their community. The Federal Reserve Bank of Kansas City, we started donating computers in 2018. We recognize that we are disposing of computers on a regular basis, and that those computers could have a meaningful benefit for those folks that don't have devices at home. So we know that our donations can't address the full issue, and so we wanted to give voice to the idea of donating computers. And so we launched the Employer Laptop Challenge on April 13th. And this is essentially with the Laptop Challenge. We provide some information on how donations can be done. There's not a one-size-fits-all approach necessarily. Since launching on April 13th, we've had over 2,600 devices donated. We have commitments for about 300 more that haven't occurred yet. This isn't something that is specific to Kansas City, Missouri. It's not specific to our 7 states. We're really encouraging employers everywhere to take this as an opportunity to support their community, especially in times like with COVID-19 going on right now, when fewer than 2 out of every 3 low-income households have the devices and the internet connection needed to learn from home. So it's definitely a considerable need right now.
All right, thanks, Jeremy. And so at the city, we entered what we're calling this digital upcycling program agreement. I've got a copy of it here. Yeah. Initially with Surplus Exchange, when Bob Akers was running Surplus Exchange back in 2015, we did have to make some amendments to our code of ordinances around disposal of surplus property. We met with city council members and with our law department staff, and essentially added a provision that allowed the surplus property manager to donate or to enter agreements with nonprofits serving digital equity needs in the city. And at that time, we entered the agreement with Surplus Exchange. Today, PCs for People owns the same facility. They purchased the property or obtained the property at 518 Santa Fe. I believe that's right, Tom?
Yep. That's the address.
And really, it's an amazing facility. If you tour that, the work that Tom and his staff have done over the last year in upgrading it to comply with NAID certification. I'll let Tom discuss further how their program operates. But through this agreement, the city donates our surplus electronics, so about anything with a cord, and then computers, laptops, tablets, smartphones. We work with Tom and his staff to push those back into the community to low-income households with students, other households that might need a computer. Tom's services include helping residents find the best and lowest cost internet service provider in their area, or outfit them with mobile Wi-Fi hotspots that Tom will discuss. So in the Employer Laptop Challenge, we back in March arranged a donation of 650 computer devices to Connecting for Good, and then just recently we had another pickup, so we're at just over 1,300 computers, tablets, laptops donated, and then, like I say, PCs for People is refurbishing those and putting them right back into the community. If you're interested, I can forward this agreement template to anyone that would want to see it. And I'm not sure if this is even the latest one, but because of the name change we've had recently with PCs for People, but we can certainly share the latest agreement.
That's okay. I have sent this agreement to Bill Lopez at Johnson County, along with the amendment that that changes the name, that acknowledges that the contract is being transferred from Connecting for Good to PCs for People. So
Okay.
That's out there, and I'd be happy to share it with anyone.
Okay, Tom. So can you then just describe how the process works from your end, like from that chain of custody that we're expecting on the city
Sure.
side, and
Absolutely. Oh, thanks for putting the logo up there. Well, first of all, I want to thank all of you for joining us. This is a very pleasant surprise. We weren't sure who was going to want to learn about this Employer Laptop Challenge, but I think the most impactful thing that I can share with you all very, very quickly is the history of, like, and it takes 2 minutes. How did we get to where we are, and how did PCs for People start? And I think you'll be happy to know 20 years ago, there was a professor of sociology at Mankato State University in Minnesota, and he was hearing, and he had a kind of a so-called troubled youth. It was a teenage boy who had gotten kicked out of his high school for having hacked into the school system and changed everyone's grades to an A. And so he got kicked out, literally got expelled from school for doing that. And so this professor just spent time with this young man and provided a computer to him. And within 2 months, he had started building websites. In fact, the first website he built was for the school that kicked him out. And he wound up getting hired to build websites for nonprofits and organizations around the Mankato area. And when the officials of Blue Earth County, which is the county where Mankato exists, when they learned about this, they offered 400 computers. They just gave 400 of their unused computers to this professor and said, surely if this worked for this one troubled youth, surely you can find 400 people to give these computers away to, and hopefully something productive can happen. And one of his students at Mankato was a young man named Casey Sorensen, who went on to go to university for graduate studies at the University of Minnesota in Minneapolis-St. Paul. He wound up getting a computer science degree. He wound up going to work for Deloitte Touche as a software consultant. And this professor, meanwhile, said, well, we keep getting computers. What am I going to do with them? And so this Casey Sorensen, as a volunteer, said, well, what if we just put the word out, find a little venue where we can offer to distribute these computers. So they thought it was going to take them several months. And it turned out in 2 days, they distributed all 400 computers to low-income eligible households. And more importantly, those 400 individuals gave them a list of names that exceeded 1,200 other families that needed computers. And so it was off of that background that Casey created the model for PCs for People, which is basically, why would a government organization feel comfortable donating their computers to a nonprofit? And so he realized that in order to make the process work, the nonprofit had to invest in becoming certified in safe data destruction and in the processing and distribution and support of those computers. And so that's the model that PCs for People is built on. And it was under the premise of that model that the city of Kansas City, Missouri, and all the rules and regulations that govern, how they dispose of their IT assets, came to realize that it was not only was it a safe bet to work with PCs for People, because we are NAID certified, we're in the process of becoming R2 certified, which stands for responsible recycling. But the benefits of those IT assets directly go back to the community that we serve. And so I wanted to tell you that story to say, that's kind of how we got into the mix. My career was at Hallmark Cards. I'm a greeting card guy. And one of the products that I really enjoyed making was those cards that play songs when you open them, and recordable cards and recordable storybooks. And those became products that demonstrated that you can use technology to improve people's lives. And in many ways, the technology is almost invisible. So when I left Hallmark in 2012 to go into nonprofit work, after a few years, I found Connecting for Good. And Connecting for Good kind of embodied what that was all about. How can we take technology, provide low-income, mesh networks and Wi-Fi hotspot devices and computers that we can make available to low-income people who can't afford them, and also provide free digital literacy training and other forms of community support. And it was only when we acquired the Surplus Exchange warehouse to kind of vertically integrate and go into electronics recycling that we realized we needed a partner. And that's when I turned to PCs for People and Casey, and I said, we need to come together. And so as of June 1st of this year, Connecting for Good is now part of PCs for People. And we were able to transfer the contract that Surplus Exchange previously had with the city of Kansas City, Missouri. And that's what Rick was just showing you. We've got a digital upcycling contract so that the retiring IT assets of the city get collected by our team, they get processed in our warehouse. And the other reason why that's so important for the city and its commitment to the community is most of the people that work in our warehouse, they come through workforce development agencies. They're typically hard to hire individuals that have had tough backgrounds, and they find technology as a pathway to a meaningful career. So we kind of double down on the benefits to the community by providing this electronics recycling opportunity. And right now we're working with other municipal governments, state governments. You may have seen or heard, we just secured a grant award from the state of Illinois to pick up and process 10,000 of their computers, as long as we commit to redistributing those computers to some of the lowest income cities in Illinois, starting with Metro East St. Louis, which is in southern Illinois. And so when we work with groups like Johnson County, Kansas, and Wyandotte County, Kansas, and other counties throughout the state of Missouri, we really want to parlay the background that we have, the work that we've been able to demonstrate with the city of Kansas City, Missouri, that we really are a legitimate, safe data destruction organization that also puts people to work, that gives a kind of a double economic benefit to the community. And so when Jeremy Higley from the Federal Reserve saw what we were doing and recognized there are businesses throughout the region that could benefit from the knowledge of knowing that their retiring assets can really help the community, that's what brought him together with Rick and me. And that's why we're here now. And at the end of the day, that's kind of the story we wanted to share, as a model for what each of you can do in your communities, and we're happy to help you with whatever anecdotes, stories, benchmarks we can provide you to make it happen.
Yeah. Okay, Tom. So Art Ware has a question for us.
All right.
Can everybody hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. So, I talked to Scott Henley,
Uh-huh.
who is with the National Christina Foundation. I was wondering if he's on. Does anybody know if he's on?
It doesn't look like he's on this call.
He would definitely be the ideal person to respond to what I'm going to say. But one of the things that he alerted me to was, like we just had the call with the New York City with Anthony from New York City, Anthony Stanford from New York City, and one of the plans that every city needs to have is a national digital inclusion strategy. And one of those strategies that I think gets overlooked is that, and these are numbers I got from Scott. There are about 55 million computers that go into the landfill every year. And as a result of that, those computers don't have the after life to be recycled to people that they could help. And so, as I understand it from Scott, there are communities that are designed to do exactly what you guys are doing with PCs for People and with Kansas City. They just want to be able to get to someone that can refurbish those computers, wipe the hard drives, clear, and make sure that there's no personal information that gets, out into the wrong hands. And, as long as they can find somebody to do that, they want them to do all that and then get it back to them so they can distribute it, from a digital inclusion strategy to their low income, so the students can do homework and people can take online classes to improve their lives and all that kind of stuff. So that's one thing. The other question that I had was, I'm good friends with the trade association for people that own and run data centers. And I have been in a number of data centers. And so I guess the question becomes, have you thought about this in Kansas City, or have you seen it, Tom, in other places where students are allowed to get involved as kind of interns to learn how to do these kind of refurbishings? Because at the end of the day, the same skills that they need to learn going off to college, going to work for a data center, putting those racks of memories in data centers, it's the exact same skill set, that translates very easily to a high-paying career, a career in the digital economy for success and youth going forward. So any thoughts in that regard?
Well, real quick, thanks, Art. Just so you're aware, I am the vice president of the board of directors for the National Christina Foundation. So,
Okay.
So I work with Scott Henley all the time, and he's done an amazing job in just a year on the job to position the National Christina Foundation to become an influential network builder for organizations like PCs for People around the country, most of whom are part of a group referred to as AFTR, AFTRR. That's the Alliance for Technology Refurbishing and Reuse. And so part of what Scott's efforts are pointing toward is expanding awareness of all the different organizations by city, by state, that provide this service. I know Jeremy Higley, who's on the call here with us today, has worked closely with Scott and with the National Christina Foundation on the, kind of complementing the Employer Laptop Challenge with a kind of a more national call out for organizations to provide, donated technology. On the part about tying that effort and those activities into kind of career-based learning opportunities for youth. I will just, again, I will point to Jeremy. A few years ago, through Jeremy's efforts, the Federal Reserve Bank in Kansas City was able to facilitate the donation of equipment to Connecting for Good at the time, before we became PCs for People. And we provided that equipment to a local nonprofit that provides not only child care services for young kids, but also to school-age kids and who are kind of growing up in poverty in the inner city. And if you know that we're from Kansas City, and if you follow the NFL, you know that we're the world champions of the NFL. And one of the Chiefs players, Travis Kelce, just purchased a building that's associated with this nonprofit that I mentioned. And it's designed to create something called the Ignition Lab. And that's going to be a learning center for youth aged 14 to 18. And PCs for People is going to be the program sponsor of one of the bays in this learning center. And it's designed to make sure that those kids get experience on not only kind of the environmental aspects of electronics recycling, but what goes into computer refurbishing, taking apart, putting back together, adding RAM, adding memory, wiping data, the importance of all the steps involved in the refurbishing and the redistribution of electronic items. So that's just one anecdote, but I know we are part of that after group that has members around the country who are doing similar things. And so I appreciate the fact you brought up Scott and the National Christina Foundation, because its purpose going forward is to become that voice of exactly the kinds of efforts that you're talking about.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah, Tom, if I could jump in on that too. I was talking to Scott at the National Christina Foundation just on Tuesday, so it's nice to know we're all running amongst like-minded folk. I will say one of the things I think is really interesting on this whole topic that we're discussing here, and I'm glad you brought up the point, Art, of the skills development piece, is there really is something here for just about anybody in terms of how someone could get involved, how what those benefits might be. For employers, it's obviously repurposing their surplus, and a lot of times it's a cost savings for employers that donating a computer to an organization that meets data security standards for data destruction and can take care of that means that employer's not having to spend money for the data destruction piece. As Tom pointed out, the additional benefit from an employer, from my perspective, it felt really nice following up with that organization that received our computers and talking to some young women. They were, I think, about 9 years old, and they were showing me how they were coding. And they had, their instructor taught them how to code by through video games, and so they showed me the code that they'd done that got the little video game to work. And they go into robotics competitions, and it's really nice to be able to do good in a way that feels good. I mean, it's to be selfish, it felt really rewarding. And with Tom's program, at PCs for People and programs like that, and an added value is that workforce development piece, giving people on that job training so that they can go on and move into, and Tom knows this happens, he's not offended, but that can get those skills and work experience and soft skills experience in an accommodating environment, and then go on to earn some more money someplace else and free up another spot back at PCs for People.
Yeah, and so I'll add that we also have a program, the Higher KC Youth program that Carrie Keefe runs through the Kansas City, what is it? Social Innovation Center. Social Innovation Center, right. So in the last few years, we've engaged those students in different activities and members of the Coalition for Digital Inclusion. I try to bring in 2 students into that 10 program each summer, and then I'll give them an assignment in somewhere in our digital equity strategic plans. And So like serendipitously, last summer, I had 2 students review remote work opportunities in Kansas City. And so now here I am 7 months into remote work, learned a few lessons from those guys. But that is just a very basic entry level kind of way for high school kids to get involved. But there are a number of other ways, like we've mentioned with Full Employment Council or Workforce Kansas, to bring people into these technical positions. And then I'm going to drop a plug here for the Kansas City Coalition for Digital Inclusion. There's a link here for the membership. Membership is free, but you're invited to join the coalition. We have a monthly meeting first Friday morning of each month, and there's a lot of sharing and collaboration that takes place there. So does anyone have questions for Tom or Jeremy and I? Distributed teams. Yes, I've heard that. Don't call it work from home, right? Call it distributed teams.
I actually know the guy that wrote. I met him at a conference that wrote this book, and I'm happy to get him on if we ever want to have a conversation. He's also the person that wrote the Vermont co-work law. That's where Vermont will give you $10,000, $5,000 in 6 months, and then $5,000 if you've been there for a year. If your job is located out of the state and you want to live in Vermont, he wrote that law. And he's very, very good. And I can get him on if you want to.
Yeah. Okay. Let's definitely connect on that, because that'd be a whole other topic I'd want to cover. Because the other cool thing happening in Kansas City is, like, for the 3rd year in a row, FlexJobs has listed Kansas City as the #1 city in the U.S. for remote work, and that's because of our ubiquitous gigabit speed internet and low cost of living. Tulsa's been paying a stipend for people to move there for remote work as well, but
I think the Chiefs play into that as well.
There's a platform like an Airbnb for co-work spaces called Liquid Space. So if you guys get a chance, Google Liquid Space and check it out.
All right. Do we have any other questions?
Well, Rick, I just wanted to call out Lazone Grays. I hope he's still on the call, but I mean, the recent announcement by the state of Kansas about broadband expansion, I think, is exciting. I would like to get Lazone's perspective on, the reality of it and what it can mean for some of the more economically marginalized areas throughout the state. And then lastly, how can the topic we're discussing, organizations making IT assets available to nonprofits like ours, contribute to making that announcement from the state of Kansas, really meaningful and really impactful. So Lazone, I hate to call you out, but I'd love to hear, your thoughts and perspectives now that announcement has been made.
Can you all hear me?
Yep.
Yep.
Okay. Well, welcome. I hope everybody is doing well and staying safe.
You bet.
Thank you.
It's nice to see you.
Same to you, and thank you for everything that everyone is doing, and you too, Tom. You're talking about the partnership with Bridging the Gap with DCF?
No. I'm talking about the Governor Kelly announcement that was that went out yesterday about broadband throughout the state of Kansas. In your mind, like, how should we view that? How much impact is it likely to have? And, in what ways can this employer laptop challenge, be something that contributes to making that even more impactful, at least in the state of Kansas and in places like Topeka and the urban core areas of Kansas City?
Well, yes, I know most of the players, and of course, if it wasn't for the COVID, we probably still wouldn't be having this conversation, and the state would have never acted. They did distribute $40-some million for broadband infrastructure of their CARES dollars. I don't know how that's going to go. A lot of money that has to be spent before December 30th is going to be hard to fund projects that will take 6 months to a year to do.
Yeah.
But I do know the people on the inside, and this is such hot off the press news. I was on the Kansas Broadband Task Force, and I reached out, and I will probably be sitting with the director of that new division. And so what I will do is sort of pick their brains. I'm not sure, his name escapes me. Adams.
Stanley Adams.
Yes. You know him?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So I think that now that it is official that there is a official Office of Broadband Development, that should probably set up a meeting to bring him up to speed on everything else that is going on, because he was really just reviewing the proposals to fund projects, but I don't think that he really understands everyone and what is going on in the state, in the region, and who the key people or organizations are. And so that as they make further decisions down the road and suggestions, such as Angela Seifer with NDIA had mentioned that Kansas don't have a digital equity plan. That may not be something that they thought of, because they're thinking about broadband and getting it out to the people. And so I have found that sometimes they're not really in their best intention. They're not really looking to the future of that. It is more than just broadband. We can get every person in Topeka a hotspot through the Bridge the Gap, but that doesn't mean that they're going to have the literacy to transform that access and a computer. That doesn't mean that they're going to have the ability of transforming that into economic empowerment. And so from me just listening to the conversation, I don't think that they understand that piece. But now that there's a formal face, a formal office with a formal budget, not coming to them as ISP providers wanting to provide service, but coming in as educators on this scope of digital equity and inclusion, so that they will know what is already out there. So
that's a great point. I mean, it's really a great point. I don't know who it was that cut in just a second ago, but I'd love to know, we're working here locally with Johnson County, Kansas, and, that strike force moved very quickly to get proposals and approvals on the allocation of funding to address a lot of these issues. But the pockets of poverty and some of these real distressed areas that speak more, like you say, Lizone, to kind of the broader issue of digital equity as opposed to just broadband connectivity. They're way more isolated throughout Johnson County, and they do take some very deliberate effort and working with a lot of different nonprofit agencies that provide services to those pockets of marginalized populations. So I'm curious to know how some of you who are on the call from Johnson County are feeling, particularly in light of what Lizone was saying. Because I'm just thrilled how quickly things went through Johnson County, and also the idea that what the kinds of stuff we've been doing in the Kansas City Coalition for Digital Inclusion here in the city can start expanding to a more regional focus that includes, Johnson, even Douglas, certainly Wyandotte, and as we move out more toward where Topeka and even as far south and west as Wichita, I think there's going to be a lot of opportunities for us to make inroads in these kind of broader digital equity type of solutions as opposed to just solely broadband. But I'd love to know what you guys from the Johnson County area would think. Go ahead, Lizone.
I'd like to add one more thing. It seems like at the very beginning is when you can really sort of plant your flag. And I know that we had a digital inclusion summit in Kansas City before. I would, if anyone knows, I would try to put that bug in Adam's ear that Kansas should have one of those right off the bat, to whereas the conversation is just cut into the square box that we're talking about. And then they can listen and learn, and we can share. And then I think not so much of talking about the broadband issue, but the digital inclusion summit type. And they should fund this, the state, and bring in Missouri, if maybe he needs to understand that it's not just a state, but it's a regional, because we're right next door to KCMO that has been a leader in the field, so that it would give 1 point, whether that's a Zoom or a meeting or whatever, for people like us to be getting with Adam and in those people's head before they run out there like a bull running down and get that cow. Yeah. So maybe somebody here can influence that or get with them to see about, hey, let's do this right now so we can get this done and out of the way.
Tom, we did have a question about the logistical process for donating computers and the pickup delivery, and you might talk more about just your chain of custody.
Sure. Yeah, that's super simple. So we have a kind of a cutoff of 15 usable computer devices. If you have less than 15 devices, we ask that you make your own drop-off at one of our 2 facilities. The most logical being our warehouse in the West Bottoms. And we have a loading dock and a doorbell. Monday through Saturday, we always have people there. But if you have 15 or more usable devices, just contact us by phone, by email. If you don't have my contact information as part of this meeting, we'll make sure you get it. And we will make arrangements with one of our trucks or vans to arrange a safe time and place for us to come and collect your IT assets. And we're not actually legally allowed to take your IT assets until whoever you are as the organization representative signs off on a chain of custody piece of documentation. And it showcases every single service that you require or that you desire from us relative to data destruction. In some cases, organizations prefer to remove their own hard drives, and we just pick up the computers without the hard drives on them. Some people are okay with us removing and wiping the hard drives, and they require literally a certificate of every serial number of every hard drive. I mean, it goes across the board. We will do whatever you as the end customer requires, and we will not take any of those IT assets until you've signed off on it. All of our employees have background checks, criminal background checks, drug screening, all the things that are required under the NAID certification. That's the National Association for Information Destruction. And so just literally contact me, T. Esselman at PCsForPeople.org. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to help.
This is how it's done.
There you go. Actually very, very stringent requirements. When the truck door is open like that, one of us is required to be there, literally guarding to make sure nobody else goes in the truck. If there can't be someone there, we are required to shut the door and lock it. And so, I mean, all kinds of things under the NAID requirements, we are required to comply with. And, that's just part of, what it takes to make sure we have legitimacy in the, the safety of how data gets destroyed to be able to enable us to do this kind of thing. And by the way, incidentally, if you're from around the country, the great thing about PCs for People is we've been able to create a scale. Art asked about National Christina Foundation. PCs for People is one of the steering council members of that national group. We have operations in Minneapolis, St. Paul, and Denver, Cleveland, Baltimore, now East St. Louis, Illinois, as well as Kansas City. So we have, each of those locations has a 4 to 6 hour driving radius. So we're covering a very big part of the country for any organization that has IT assets in need of safe disposition and refurbishing and redistribution back to the community.
Tom and Rick, one thing that I would add here for any employers that are thinking about doing a donation is to spend a little creative time thinking how you can really maximize that donation. What I found when we donated computers last year, it involved quite a few people on our asset management team because for us at the Federal Reserve, we wanted to go through to take care of our own data destruction, which is something that we typically do. And we had several of our asset management people involved with doing that. And of course, this is a little different now with COVID, of course, but I was able to schedule a tour for those asset management folks to go down to what's now PCs for People and take a tour. And afterwards, one of the IT folks said, I'm involved with a lot of our bank's employee engagement activities. He does harvesters, and he does a variety of things. He said, this is the first time I was able to use my work skills, my professional skills, to do something to help the community. And from a community engagement perspective with your employees, there's some opportunity there. And there's also some community goodwill. I think when your customer base, when your community sees that you're investing and supporting the community, that means a lot. And so there's a lot of good creative things that you can do with just a little bit of extra effort and thinking of how you might position that.
Thanks, Chairman. I wanted to call out John. What is it? Bowden. John Bowden, please. Yes. I see you've had your hand raised. I want to make sure you get your question in.
All right. So just so you know who I am, I'm currently a data analyst for facilities management, but I've been greatly involved with our warehouse team here on operations and processes and procedures, and we generally handle the surplus for the county, not just the computers, but also furniture, file cabinets, whatever. So if you need any file cabinets, please let our TFM crew know they can hook you up, right? So my question is this. So one of the concerns I'd heard from our DTI group, and I don't think we have any left on this call, right? So I'm asking maybe on their behalf, is we have like an Office 365 county enterprise license for the operating systems on our machines. Mm-hmm. And when we turn those computers over, let's say for donation, do you put your own operating systems on them, or how does that work?
Yeah, so we are Microsoft authorized refurbisher. So there's a complete data wiping. If any sectors just show up as compromised, the hard drives get completely destroyed. And our data wiping machines print out by serial number every hard drive that we wipe. And so what we wind up doing is we can only reload a hard drive if it certifiably has 100% sector integrity after we wipe it. Otherwise, we install brand new hard drives, and Microsoft 10 operating system right now is what we're doing. But more importantly, we just announced nationally that PCs for People has been contracted by Microsoft as the nationwide Microsoft authorized refurbisher. So from this point forward, any new licenses are going to be ordered through PCs for People. So I just wanted to let you know that, John, to verify the degree to which we've been audited kind of over and over again to the point where Microsoft feels like we can represent any refurbisher in the country who needs licenses to install new operating systems on refurbished computers.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Tom, has a question about workforce development partners in Kansas.
Okay, who's got that question? Is there anything specific you want to know?
That was me. I was just wondering if you had any Kansas specific and maybe even Johnson County specific partners that you work with on the workforce development side of that. I know that would be an interesting piece from our leadership.
Oh, excellent. Yeah. So workforce partnership in KCK, Kansas City, Kansas, has been a longtime partner of ours. I joined in January 2016, and by that point we already had taking in 4 different interns from Workforce Partnership Group. A lot of them are students who've gone in and out of like Kansas City, Kansas Community College, or who've been going through reentry programs out of incarceration, or otherwise just have trouble getting a job or keeping a job. And I'm happy to report now our current staff, we have 20 people on staff. 2 of them were initially interns through Workforce Partnership. In the almost 5 years that I've been there, we have done a total of 13 interns that were paid by Workforce Partnership at a wage for the first 8 to 12 weeks. But during that time, we wound up hiring 6 of those 13. We wound up hiring either part or full time. And as I said, right now we actually have 2 full-time people that came from there. So that's been our most solid partnership on the Kansas side. The other thing that we've done, we have a very deep commitment to the Kansas City, Kansas Housing Authority. Again, something Lazone Grace from Topeka is well aware of. About 6 years ago now, there's a housing authority community in Juniper Gardens, which is in northeast Wyandotte County. And these are all kind of single family or multiple family apartment units. It's not a high-rise tower. I think there's a total of like 230 apartments spread out over 6 city blocks. And Connecting for Good at the time, we built a wireless mesh network with access points into every one of those apartments. And we provided free internet access until September of last year, when the Ubiquiti equipment that we use actually became obsolete. So we've been trying to get funding to revitalize that network. But since then, most of the residents have hotspots and other ways that they're able to manage their own internet. But between the Housing Authority and Workforce Partnership, and it's all been in the greater Kansas City metro area, that's really been the extent of our commitment to helping people with everything from resumes and job searches to literally internships and hiring. And we'd love to expand that. We've tried off and on to do things in Topeka with Lazone. The changing of some of the municipal government administrations has been like a roller coaster there. But we were Connecting for Good was incorporated in the state of Kansas. So we will always retain a commitment to doing things that benefit the residents on the Kansas side of the state line.
Thomas, a question about how you determine recipients. I'm assuming that means like households that receive the refurbished computers.
Well, right now, I mean, anybody that qualifies as low income, it's up to 200% of the federal poverty guideline. There's income eligibility documentation. You have to have a photo ID, and it can either be, a SNAP or a TANF or other kind of food stamp related benefits. It could be a housing voucher, or if you're working, we just need 3 consecutive paychecks just to be able to establish that your earnings do not exceed 200% of the federal poverty guidelines. Other than that, that's it. I mean, you qualify for the discounted, any of the computers that have Windows operating systems or software on it, or any of the mobile internet devices that we provide. Just a photo ID and some kind of income eligibility documentation.
And then Art, do you want to ask your question?
Yeah, I mean, the question I have is kind of the economics of this in terms of, because you do have expenses that you have to cover and overhead and so forth. So what does those numbers look like from a break-even standpoint?
Yeah, that's a great question, Art. And Connecting for Good was able to get through the 4 or so years that I was running it on the basis of philanthropic grants, which is great, but it's not sustainable. And again, Lazone Grace knows this. When I joined, Connecting for Good was actually running out of funding, because up until 2015, all it really stood for was, building computer networks. And there was a limited attractiveness from a philanthropic perspective to like funding technology solutions. So I made it my point to focus on what are the outcomes associated. And again, getting back to what Lazone talks about, digital equity. And the easiest way I can talk about it, Art, is the 4 E's: education, employment, economic impact, and the environment. And so I set out, and starting in January of 2016, to make everything that Connecting for Good does focus on demonstrable outcomes in one of those 4 E's: education, employment, economic impact, or the environment. And what it wound up doing is broadening the appeal to such a diverse group of funding organizations that, depending on who they were and what was attractive to them, I just focused on that aspect of it, so that they could provide, even if it was, $2,000, $3,000, $5,000 grants. So that was great, but it took a lot of legwork to run around, with your hands out. As long as the outcomes were there, the funders liked it. But like I said, when we acquired a warehouse to do electronics recycling, that was a year ago, it became clear to me you're gonna require a lot more than just angel donors and philanthropic grants to get by. You got to pay those enormous utility bills and insurance costs every single month. And so the reason, again, why I turned to PCs for People is because the model that PCs for People has had since day one is about not only impact to the community, but financial sustainability. If you're willing to put the investment in to demonstrate that you can safely destroy data and safely take care of IT assets, that's the sourcing and processing part of the equation, then you can fund the distribution and the support side of the equation, the digital literacy training, the job training. And so it's those two halves going together. Sourcing and processing, you got to run like a business. Distribution and support, you run as a social justice nonprofit. You put the two together, you can earn income and you can be attractive to foundations and grant funders. I would urge you to reach out to Casey Sorensen, the CEO of PCs for People. I mean, I think in my mind, he's a young man, but I think he's really written the book on nonprofit sustainability. And it's one of the reasons I was so eager for Connecting for Good to become part of that family, because we're driven by the social outcomes, but we all know if you don't have the financing to support it, it's just not going to last. And so I think it's very doable in the context of what we're talking about here with this employer laptop challenge. In fact, many times we don't even like to call what we're asking for as donations. We like to present ourselves as an IT service company. And what we offer is, the collection of your IT assets. And it's a service we're providing. And oh, by the way, we don't charge you a fee for that, because we're able to turn that around into ways to serve the community. And we're also able to generate revenue that helps sustain our mission. So we're even very leery of calling it, computer donations. We like to refer to it as IT asset collections, or pickups, or just we will help you dispose of your IT assets. Because the minute we start saying donate, 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 the more it positions us as as just a nonprofit, as though all we're doing is looking for handouts. And I think that can be a blessing, but it can also be a curse when you're talking about financial sustainability.
Yeah. Well, so we're coming right to an hour. Any more questions before I end the video? And then if you do want to hang around a bit after I've ended the video, we can answer any other questions you might have. But okay,
I would be happy to set up something with the folks at the 7x24 exchange. If you guys ever wanted to talk about the data center and things that they're looking for, there's a huge construction underway with Amazon and Google and all these folks.
Oh yeah, that'd be great.
we need to be able to feed that with the kind of programs that we're doing and back into, the needs of that with whatever else we're doing. We need to, double up and triple up with skills and, student training and so forth to feed, because that's where the jobs of the future are. And I'd be happy to set something up, maybe with you, Jeremy, you, Rick, and Tom, anybody else that wants to get involved, and maybe we can, bring a presentation to this group, down the line to talk
Yeah, that
about.
sounds great. That sounds great.